The Frozen Throne returns. Blizzard reveals the crazy Last Titan info. The Scourge is back as well. What's happening with the Scourge? Right? Like, what happened to the there must always be a Lich King? Well, don't tell me that fucking Crown of Wills and Shadowlands is controlling the Scourge right now. So we got an uncontrolled Scourge, maybe? We got a Frozen Throne still sitting there, very iconic, but without any sort of Helm of Domination sitting up there with it. Will this all return? We know we're going back to Northrend. What is Blizzard going to do with Icecrown Citadel, one of the most iconic places in World of Warcraft? Let's see what Doran, the Teller of Truths, has to say.
We all know Northrend is getting updated in the Last Titan, but the most recent interview finally gave us the official confirmation. So far, we've been stuck on the World Soul Saga stuff and just pure speculations. Well, they just talked about how Northrend has changed the time and the current events that are happening, and they also mentioned the big discussion they had about none other than the Frozen Throne. Almost certainly, this will be a big focal point of the Last Titan. With the recent lore, we know for a fact that the Scourge is still active. It is still pumping out new undead. So, what is everything we currently know? What will Northrend...
The Scourge is still active, but the Dead Scar has been healed, right, by the light. Evidently, that's something that can happen now. That's a new take on WoW lore. That it was thought that the Dead Scar was unhealable. That damage caused by the Scourge to that extent was just never going to be healed. And now we have this, like, overpowering light. So overpowering, in fact, that it corrupts shit at the same time sometimes when it's used. Was able to heal the Dead Scar.
Look like, and what will happen to the Frozen Throne and now that we no longer have the Lich King. So I tried using the new Polybus feature to recreate the Burning Legion invasion, and you can see for yourself how it turned out. With just a few clicks of a button, you can create your own comics. Just enter keywords, a brief plot description, and the software will generate your own manga. Best of all, you can do this completely free 3 times per day. You can really
Is this the Last Titan waiting room? Yes.
Characters, or even combining the established ones. So make sure to click the link in the description below and check out the Polybus web platform.
There it is. Use, by the way, the code if you really want to use it. The chat is blocking it. It's Doran S77. Doran's 77. I'll put it in the chat.
So, we've been talking about this for a while now. It's not really news, there will be a revamp. We have talked about this since the World Soul Saga was announced. We know Northrend is going to get revamped, but a week back we got an interview, like an official interview with a few developers, of them talking about their experience with the saga so far, their concerns and updates about Northrend in the Last Titan. It's very interesting that they're talking about this like a month and a half before the release of Midnight, which strongly indicates that we will get the announcement this year.
I was gonna say the same thing Doran's saying right here. The fact that they're talking about the Last Titan already, like Midnight hasn't launched, and already in the dev interviews and shit, they're bringing up the Last Titan. They brought up Northrend. I think that means BlizzCon, we're getting some Last Titan shit. There's no doubt in my mind. We're like, it is like all but guaranteed. We are either gonna get some closing cinematics for Midnight, like whatever's happening in Midnight at the time. We'll probably get that, and we'll get some sort of like very short, not the official cinematic of the Last Titan, but definitely a cinematic for the Last Titan.
Very likely on BlizzCon in September. Most people were thinking it's next.
Another
Expedition Meow. Thank you for that sub. I appreciate that a lot, Death Knight of our Scourge.
Next year, but realistically, they wouldn't organize this huge event to just talk about what, 12.2? With the current expansion, Midnight is coming out in March, 12.1 very likely in summer, and the Last Titan is going to get announced shortly after. This is also probably the reason why they haven't given us the map.
We're getting this roadmap today. Oh my god, I forgot. I'm so excited for that. That's right, the Blizzard event, the State of Azeroth's today, and we're getting the new roadmap for 2026.
For this year's content, they're very likely keeping it for pre-BlizzCon or Midnight release. It does line up well with the timeline they gave us. It will mean that the Last Titan is coming out in 2027, probably near the end, which means the saga is probably going to end in like 28 or 29. To be completely clear, they really just need to hit the ball on this. I mean, so far the War Within was just, I guess, an expansion, and Midnight is not really getting a whole lot of hype, despite the biggest threat ever coming to Azeroth. They have talked in this interview about how the update to Quaterlas was well received, and what they have learned for their big task of updating Northrend, and honestly, the whole continent revamp is going to be the most exciting feature of pretty much everything in this World Soul Saga. They have talked about how much of a task task it is to keep the legacy of Northrend and Wrath of the Lich King, because if you were Alliance, you might not even have any memories of what lost, but everyone knows and remembers Northrend, like pretty much everyone that played Warcraft 3.
And we talked about the interview this morning with the Blizzard devs about even remodeling Stormwind and Orgrimmar, and how like they're really looking at the feedback that the community is going to give them about the revamp of Silvermoon and the surrounding areas, the Plague Lands and everything. They really want to see like how does the player base react to not necessarily like a cataclysm destruction of old land, but a revamping of old land. So if we react well to it, they already said Stormwind and Orgrimmar probably going to get redone. Obviously, Northrend going to get its revamp too, and this will continue on through all these old places, and I hope it does, because I think there's a lot of really cool old zones in WoW that could use a little bit of up-resing love and maybe some new quest lines and shit so we can actually go back there and do shit.
Wrath of the Lich King, and that was like the peak of WoW players, which means this is not just another new expansion zone. They have also talked about how Northrend has...
No, they would never change Grizzly Hill's music. That would be blasphemous.
...changed, and interesting enough with a few factors, one of them being time, and second, the current events. Now, it is very hard to say the exact time because even Blizzard doesn't really know, but we had a time skip post-Shadowlands, so it's probably been like 20 years since we last visited Northrend. The last update we got of Northrend was right after the Shadowlands with the book called Exploring Azeroth Northrend, which kinda went through the lore of all the zones. However, honestly, I can't say for certain whether Blizzard will actually stick to the canon and remember this book. The interesting question is whether Northrend was actually even hit by the cataclysm, because as you may know, the cataclysm, the shattering, happened right after we left in after Wrath, and pretty much it reshaped all the zones on Azeroth. I mean, it even hit the opposite side of Northrend Pandaria, altering the mist that was protecting it. Which
I wonder how Deathwing felt about Northrend. He had Galakron, which was like the ultimate dragon, who Deathwing fought against himself. His skeleton and everything was there in Northrend. There was some crazy shit for dragons in Northrend. Remember Dragonspire and everything? So maybe he just avoided it altogether. I don't think he wanted to deal with Northrend and the Scourge and everything else. Maybe he was worried about corruption and all kinds of, even though he was already corrupted. But Northrend would have been an interesting one. I don't think it got touched by, I think we can assume it did not get touched in Cataclysm, by lore-wise. Obviously, in the game it didn't get touched. But what Blizzard does going forward, definitely going to have to be their best effort. I agree with Eggsy there. Yeah, it has to be good, but don't change much. Yeah, and Expedition, yeah, definitely they're going to have to give it their all. It's going to take a lot, because Dorn made a good point in the video. Yeah, revamping Silvermoon, big deal, but also not a big deal because it was a fucking, like, nobody was there. First of all, the Alliance never went there, and the Horde, nobody was hanging out in Silvermoon. Nobody was there doing anything. So what you're doing is you're bringing that zone back to relevance. Northrend, or bringing it to relevance for the first time, really. Northrend, everybody knows it. Everybody's got memories there. Everyone has love for those zones. The biggest lore moments in the game ever happened there. So, yeah, you got to be a little bit more careful when you rebuild that one.
How we got there in the first place. I mean, the book Exploring Azeroth Northrend didn't really write down any significant changes to the zones, and we did technically go to Northrend in the Shadowlands pre-patch, so they didn't update anything there either. However, for lore purposes, it could be interesting to see some changes just based on the shattering. Maybe Zul'Drak will change, or some areas that have been split or divided. It doesn't have to be a massive change that will contradict the lore, but it would be interesting to see the continent impacted by the shattering. They kind of confirmed a thing in that interview that we're not going back to just updated Northrend, like Northrend with updated assets. It's going to be a different place. Two factors can change.
Man, I look at this image here, and I just think what Blizzard did. I mean, this such an iconic set, such an iconic weapon. Frostmourn's gone. Helm of Domination ripped apart. It's depressing. So how could they do such a thing? Damn you, Shadowlands. Damn you.
Going to be a different place. Two factors have changed, as they said, time and the current events. I'm guessing by time they mean potentially Cataclysm, but also the 20 years of time, meaning some issues may have been solved. You can check out a video I did when the book was released, previously covering Northrend, but we do have some updates to like the quest lines, what happened with the Tonka, the Vrykul, and the such. However, something really interesting they talked about in this interview is the long discussion they said they had about whether we are going to go to the Frozen Throne or not, which, as you may know, was pretty much the center of Northrend. I mean, the whole point of Wrath of the Lich King, and most of the premise of Warcraft 3, literally Warcraft 3 the Frozen Throne. I'm guessing as they brought that up, we are going to return to the Frozen Throne.
It's iconic,
the
man.
Interesting question is, what are we going to return to? I mean, the crown is no longer there, the Lich King doesn't exist, and neither does the jail. Well, luckily we did get some updates, and if you watch my videos, you might have heard me talking about this many times. The Scourge is still a thing, and that has been confirmed, even now with the small incursions around midnight, but in the book itself it was confirmed that all the Scourge machinery is still active, and the Scourge is very much a threat. Keep in mind, this is post-Shadowlands lore, so pretty much right around what they should be now. It is implied that there is no central figure to rule them, and very likely more intelligent beings could take over certain parts of the faction. The machinery in particular is said to have been pumping out undead pretty much
we gonna do Naxxramas again for the 17th time? Maybe. Wouldn't be shocked.
Stopped since Rad, so they haven't been in decline at all. I mean, a lot of people
Shadowland ruined our lives.
The only difference was that when Artis was ruling, the forges were like working double time and pumping undead non-stop. Now, without such a central figure and the control, the undead building process has definitely slowed down a lot, but it has not been stopped. So, very likely, we will still see the Scourge, but I think the Frozen Throne is going to be more relevant for the Titans than the Scourge. I know Shadowlands lore and all that, but if you remember,
the Frozen Throne's clearly important. Obviously, the place where the Lich King used to sit, and was his base of his power. And then, I hate to talk about it, but Shadowlands lore, the Jailer, clearly there was that mechanism underneath the Titan facility, whatever he was going to use to bridge the gap between his world and our world, destroy everything, whatever it was. We still don't really know the Jailer's plan. He was trying to stop what is to come. What the fuck was he talking about? A cosmos divided cannot stop what is to come. That was the last thing he ever said. We don't fucking know. I don't even think Blizzard knows at this point. But at least we know that, yes, Icecrown Citadel, important place. Clearly some Titan shit going on down there. And so, yeah, I could see how it becomes very relevant in The Last Titan.
There was literally a giant forge beneath Icecrown that siphoned the essence of the world soul when Shadowlands ended. And apparently,
I wish. I don't think I'll still be live.
Thrown in that exact place for a reason. It's not a random location. So, lore-wise, as the Titans are coming back and the whole World Soul Saga is wrapping up, I'm almost certain there is something very important in that exact place in Northrend. There is a reason why the essence of Azeroth is coming out from under the Frozen Throne. And furthermore, to not repeat myself for the millionth time, but based on the Dragonflight book and the Dragonflight ending where Iridikron foreshadowed his return in The Last Titan, that he will be waiting, we have learned more. We know that he had a giant base underneath Northrend, and we have placed it somewhere right around Radgate based on the book descriptions. So there is definitely an underground system under Northrend that we will soon discover. The other factor they mentioned, current events, implies that changes are yet to happen in Midnight, which will reflect on Northrend. We can only really speculate wildly at this point. All we know is that the Titans will be returning, so I'm guessing some sort of a big impact or something void related will happen there. I don't think the Titans are going to just come through the door in Ulduar. Another interesting thing that I mentioned in the previous video that I released in this interview that you can check out is more detail, as well as they said that they have been inspired by Midnight and The Last Titan revamp, and that they plan to do the same thing to more older zones.
Yeah, more underground. Yes, Iridikron has some sort of hidden bat cave or something like that under Northrend. That we know that. That's some lore out there. So what else happens? I mean, we know there's Nerubians underground. There's an entire Nerubian city under Northrend too. Did we already do enough Nerubian shit in The War Within? Maybe, but they could become relevant too. There's a lot of shit going on under Northrend. Obviously, the entire freaking Titan facilities and all that shit, how deep they probably go. There's been old gods down there. Lots of stuff underground. But I think we did enough underground expansion shit. I don't think underground's going to be the main story of Northrend, but there's certainly going to be some underground moments.
In particular, parts of Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, which implies that we may be seeing that after the World Soul Saga. In particular, they mentioned the Stone Tower Mountains, but many other zones that had a lot of lore and background that have just been stuck in time. The entire point of this interview is that they want to make Azeroth feel more alive. Some zones only kind of exist for you to just do the story, and then they just get completely like stuck in time and become completely relevant. They want us to relive these zones and update them, so I think there is a really big hint in this interview for what we may be seeing after the World Soul Saga as well. Thanks for watching. Check out why no one is playing these races based on the statistics that we have by clicking on the screen, and check out my brand new Witcher lore channel that I just opened by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Yeah, nice video overall, and obviously Lich King lore, Northrend lore, it's some of the best lore, in my opinion. It is the best lore ever done in the game. Got messed up a little bit, got scuffed up in Shadowlands. We'll see what happens with it going forward. What happens with the Scourge? What happens with Icecrown Citadel? What happens with, you know, the former Lich King whole setup and everything? We'll see. Interested to see in the Last Titan what happens there. A nice video from Doran.